Hello and welcome to this video tutorial brought to you by tutvid.com. We're going to take a look at creating distressed text. You can see we have this example right here, and this is in Adobe Illustrator. I'm using Adobe Illustrator CS2, and this is what we're going to make. We are going to start though in Adobe Photoshop first. We need to create a new document, so go File, New. And we're going to make this 800 by 600 pixels, and we're going to set the resolution to 300. Background contents, set them to white. Although what we really want is black, so if your background color is something other than orange, you can just select background color there in the New File dialog box. But if you have it set to white, you can just quickly switch to black by hitting Control-I, or if you're on the Mac, that would be Command-I. Alright, I'm going to move this over just a little bit and bring the Layers palette up and into the window right here, right like this. Alright, the first thing we need to do is create a new layer. And then we need to grab our brush tool, and we want to grab a 36 pixel brush right here. Then we need to go Window, Brushes to open up the Brushes panel. Oops, don't want layer comps. I want brushes. And then here in the Brushes panel, we want to make this brush more of a flattened circle, i.e. an oval. We want to make this an oval. So I'm going to click on one of those two anchor points in this circle here, and I'm just going to flatten this thing out, just like that. I'm also going to increase the spacing quite a bit, maybe so there are 5 dots that appear here in the Brushes dialog box. I want to make the brush tip also a little more flat, more like that. Now I'm going to come up here to Shape Dynamics. I'm going to select it. You can see I checked it off as well. We're going to set Size Jitter to 100%. I'm going to set Angle Jitter to 1%. Okay, we're also going to come over here and select Scattering. And we're going to scatter to about 500% and increase the count to 2 or 3. Let's check out 2 here. Now I think we're going to stick with 3, just like that. And notice pen pressure is my control. Don't worry if you don't have a pen. Well, actually, you won't be able to set it to pen pressure. You could probably just set it to off. I'm going to leave it to pen pressure. I'm actually not going to use my tablet pen. I'm just going to use my mouse, and I'm just going to draw across the screen a couple times. Whoops, with the pen. Don't shut your layers off. Draw across, across, and across, just like that. So this is what we're doing, is we're beginning to create a pattern that we're going to use over in Adobe Illustrator, and I'll show you exactly how we're going to do that in just a minute. For the meantime, we're going to create another layer by selecting the Create a New Layer button, and on this layer we're going to use the brush tool again, but here we're just going to grab a 1 pixel brush, make sure the hardness is set to 100, master diameter obviously at 1 pixel. And then what we're going to do here is just scribble around our document. It really doesn't matter how you do it. You can just kind of randomly do it. I'm just using my mouse. I'm not using a tablet or anything fancy. You can just sort of make your own pattern. It's not really anything difficult at all. And when you like what you see, select this layer 2. You can see this has our lines on it. Go up here to Layer and Merge Down. So now we've merged all of our white into one layer. I'm now going to hold down the Control key, or if you're on the Mac, that's the Command key, and I'm going to click the layer thumbnail. That selects everything on the layer. I'm going to come over here to the Paths tab. Okay, if the Paths palette is not open, come up here to Window, Paths. In the Paths palette here, I'm going to select this button right here, which is Convert Selection to a Path. Okay, yeah, make work path from selection. Select that. And you can see we've got ourselves a work path here. If I delete this layer 1, you can see we have this work path. So, come over here into the Paths palette, make sure you have that work path selected, come up here to File, go to Export, and hit Export Paths to Illustrator. Okay, I'm just going to save this onto my desktop, and I'm just going to name this Pattern AI.ai. And then I can close this. I'm not even going to save it. Alright, so I'm going to minimize Photoshop, and here is Adobe Illustrator. Let's create a new document. Width will be 800 by 600. Just leave it in RGB color mode. Hit OK. And what we need to do first thing is open up the little pattern that we just created. So I'm going to come over here into Bridge, I'm going to go to my desktop, and I'm going to find that. Where is it? Here it is. I'm just going to double click on it, and here we go. We have it opened in Adobe Illustrator. I'm going to bring my layers palette into view here so you can see what I'm doing. Also bring my color palette in. Okay, I'm going to select layer 1, and you can see it's quite an intricate path. We're going to make it a little bit bigger. Whoops. By holding down the Shift and Alt or Shift and Option keys and clicking and dragging one of those anchor points. I'm also going to double click on the fill color over here on my toolbar, and I'm going to fill this with black, full black. Hit OK, and you can see this is the pattern that we created. So what I'm going to do now is select this and go Edit, Copy. Okay, I'm going to move this over, and I can now get rid of that file. I'm not going to save it before I close it down. We are going to paste that pattern into our document here. So I'm going to hit Command or Control B, paste that in. Just select the whole thing. By the way, I'm quickly selecting the whole thing by selecting that little circle to the right hand side of your layer in the Layers palette. Shift Alt or Shift Option to make the pattern a bit bigger, make it kind of fill our document. Alright, and then I'm just going to lock that layer, and I'm going to shut off the visibility by selecting the lock and then pressing that little eyeball in the Layers palette to shut all that down. Create a new layer, and on this layer we're going to put some text. I'm just going to type a period, distressed, period, style, period. I'm going to highlight the text, increase the size to 72 points, and I have a font on my system called, what is it called? This Black Oak. Alright, you can see it's quite large. Matter of fact, we might make it a little bit smaller just so we can better handle it. And you can see it appears to be very flattened, like something's pressing it flat. So we're going to kind of counteract that, and we're going to press this little button here called Character. And right here, this one, the letter T with an up and down arrow key, we're going to increase this to about 175, maybe even 200. Yeah, we'll stick with 200. And while we're in here, we'll adjust our size. We'll reduce the size to about 48, maybe even smaller than that. Let's try 36. Close the Characters palette. And here is our text. So we have our text. What we need to do now is give it that distressed look, that rough, ragged look. And we're going to do that by unlocking our pattern layer. I'm going to select that circle to select it. I'm going to hit Command or Control C. And I'm going to lock it up and hide the layer again. Now I'm going to directly select this layer 2. I'm not just going to select the text. I'm going to actually select that circle. So this mask that we're about to apply to this text, we're going to put right on this layer, not on the layer's sublayer. Okay, the sublayer being this bit of distressed text. Okay, so we're going to select layer 2, and then up here in the Transparency palette, if you don't have the Transparency palette open, go Window, Transparency. In the Transparency palette, double click on the blank space next to that little thumbnail, and we now have a mask. Everything's gone because our mask by default is filled with black. We don't want it filled with black though, so we're going to press this little clip button, which essentially unclips the mask. It is now all white, and I'm going to hit Edit, Paste in Front. This is pasting our pattern right in place, basically is what it's doing, because there's nothing to paste in front of. And you can see if we deselect, our text is going to have a bit of a distressed style. That's just as it is now. I can select the entire opacity mask by selecting that little circle on the opacity masks layer, and I can begin to edit our path. I can make it smaller. I can tilt it. I can do all sorts of things. Whoops. Matter of fact, I'm going to go Object, Object, Group here. I've got the entire path system selected there. That'll make it a little easier to select. I can drag it around, and by dragging it around I get a bit of a different distressed effect. Okay, so it all depends on what you create in Photoshop will help determine the amount of distressed look you get to your text here in Illustrator. I'm going to rotate this to be more straightened out like that, maybe make it a little longer like that, and I think I'm going to stick with that. So once you have what you like, select this thumbnail, and we're now out of the layer mask. You can see that we've applied the mask to layer 2 here, which I'm going to rename. I'm going to name this D-Text. So the D-Text layer has this dotted line under it, which is telling me that the mask is on that layer. So I can select this distressed text directly, and we don't have a mask on it. That's exactly what I want, because we're going to need that in a little bit for some extra stuff that we're going to be doing to this bit of text. But for now, select this sublayer, which is just this distressed text, and come up here into the swatches palette. Again, if the swatches palette's not open, window, swatches, and we're just going to select one of these tans. Let's try this light tan to start us off. So there we go, distressed text, very simple, and that's how you create distressed text. But before we go, we're going to take this to an entirely other level. We're going to kick the whole thing up a couple notches here, and we're going to add some stuff to make this text really look nice. If you just want base plain distressed text, here it is. Very flat, very plain, done. Okay, but we're going to make it a little special. So let's zoom in, Control plus, and our distressed text is right here, sitting right in between all of our stuff here on screen. What we want to do is create a new sublayer. So I'm going to select the D-Text layer, and there is actually a new sublayer button. It's this little layer icon with an arrow pointing at it. Okay, we've created a new sublayer. On this layer, grab the rectangle tool, switch the foreground color to, let's try this darker brown, and just draw a very thin rectangle, like that. Grab your selection tool, and hold the Shift key, and tilt the rectangle on a diagonal, just like that. Now notice, if you're following along, I'm sure you see that this rectangle is being affected by the mask. This is one of the reasons that we put the mask on the D-Text layer and not directly on the text, because now even these diagonal lines are going to be affected by our mask. It's exactly what we want. So let's move this over. I'm going to zoom back out. I'm going to hold down the Alt key to copy this, and hold down the Shift key to constrain it to stick to the straight line, so we're coming straight out from that. And I'm going to let go right about there. Now we're going to create a series of these lines going all in between here, and in order to do that, we're going to use Adobe Illustrator's Blend tool, and the Blend tool is right here, directly beneath the Gradient tool, sitting right to the right-hand side of the eyedropper tool. Double click on that Blend tool, and it opens up the Blend options. We're going to set some specified steps here, and let's try 60 to start with. So hit OK. Oh, by the way, you may have this spacing set to smooth color. If so, select specified steps and 60. Alright, what I need to do first is select both objects, both of those rectangles, then select the Blend tool. Now here's where it gets tricky. I'm going to switch to my magnifying glass temporarily. Whoops, zoomed way in. And here I am, I'm zoomed in on this one angle. I'm going to select the Blend tool, and I'm going to hit this anchor point, which you probably cannot see. Let me change this to blue. This anchor point in the bottom corner here. Okay, and then I'm going to move all the way across the screen. I'm holding down spacebar to move. Get my Blend tool back, and I'm going to select the corresponding anchor point on the other rectangle. So the same anchor point on both rectangles is what you want to select. I'm going to click that, and you can see when I zoom out, we've got this nice sort of radiant gradient angled box thing that we just made, and that's exactly what we want. So what we need to do is move this down. So I'm going to hold down my Shift key, press the down arrow key until it's down over our text. I'm going to adjust it so it's affecting all of the text, just like that. And what I need to do now is mask it to the text. So what I'm going to do is directly select our distressed text, not the D-Text layer, but just that text, okay? So I'm going to hit that little circle. I'm going to go Edit, Copy. Then I'm going to select this layer 3, which is our blend. I'm going to rename it Blend. And up here in the transparency palette, I want to mask it. So again, double click. Everything is clipped, which in this case we want it to stay clipped because we want it to be disappeared or gone from everywhere except our text. And we're going to hit Edit, Paste in Front. And we want to switch our foreground color to white because white reveals entirely. Alright, but that's not all. We don't want this to just appear in a solid color the entire time. What I want to do is right click, because I'm right clicking on, this is still editable text, okay? I don't want it to be editable text because I want to be able to apply a gradient. So I'm going to right click and hit create outlines. It is now no longer editable text, but I can apply a gradient, which is exactly what I'm going to do. I just applied a gradient. I'm going to go gradient, and I'm going to switch the angle of this gradient to, let's just try 90, just straight up and down. And I'm going to select the black first off, because black in masks hides. So right now the black is at the top, because you can see the diagonal lines at the bottom, but they're gone by the time they get to the top. In order to make sure this is full solid black, open up my color palette. I'm going to select the little flyout arrow, hit CMYK, and I'm going to make sure all of my sliders are over to 100% rich black. Now you can see at the top of the letters, those angles are completely gone. Alright, so I'm going to select that mask again, which is this text. I'm still working in that opacity mask. Go back to the gradient, and I'm going to move the white over just a little bit, and I'm going to select that. I just pressed there to add another anchor point, and up here in color I'm just going to make it black. Alright, so we've got sort of this angled effect here, and we're just messing around with the mask to make it look a little cooler. Then we're going to go back to transparency, select our blend thumbnail, go to layer blend mode, and let's try hard light. That looks pretty good. Hard light I think is what we're going to stick with. Okay, so that's the blend. Let's close that layer by just hitting that little arrow. Create a new layer and drag it beneath the D-text layer. You will know you're getting it beneath, not when those two arrows show up, but when you see a black line between the two layers. You can see we're now between that pattern layer and our D-text. I'm going to select layer 4 here, and we still have that text selected from before when we created the mask. So I'm going to hit Command or Control F, which is paste in front, or in this case it's just going to paste it right in place. I'm going to fill this with black. Okay, you can see that our D-text mask, it's not affecting it, but it's making it look like it is distressed. So what we're going to do here is right click. Well, I want to lock up the D-text layer first so we don't accidentally select anything from that layer. So there we go, locked it up. Right click on this layer and hit create outlines, just like we did in that mask a moment ago. Now go edit, copy, edit, paste in front. And now hit shift down arrow key and shift right arrow key. So we've just moved it down and over. Alright, what I'm going to do now is shut off the visibility to the D-text layer. So now we just have our little weird looking shadow thing. Before I go selecting it, I'm going to again use the blend tool. I'm going to set specified steps to somewhere in the range of 40 to 45. Let's say 45 for now. Go back to my select tool, select both of them, grab my blend tool. Actually going to zoom in, and with the blend tool I'm going to select 2 points right here on the periods, and I just created the blend. You can see now that it's going to have this sort of 3D look. Okay, I'm going to select the whole thing though, very specifically selecting that layer, and I'm going to lower the opacity to about 40. So now it's this light gray. Let's turn the D-text layer back on. You can see it looks pretty weird because it just looks like, it's hard to tell that it's distressed because you just have this light gray filling in behind it. So what we need to do is mask part of our little 3D effect to get rid of what you're seeing there. I'll show you exactly how we're going to do that. Open up our blend layer, go all the way to one of the sub layers, and we want to select the bit of text right here that's actually in the same exact place as our editable text. Okay? Select that, copy it. Now come up here to our blend, and we're selecting the blend, not the blend layer, just the blend for now. And I'm going to double click here in the transparency palette. I'm going to unclip it, and I'm going to go edit, paste in front. And that is already filled with black, so you can see now our text looks normal again. The reason, by the way, that all those cut marks and distress marks look white is because it's just showing through to the background. Let me get out of here, out of the opacity mask that is. Just hit the little thumbnail there. If I were to, let me just create a layer just underneath here, just as an example. I'm going to fill this with a dark green, and I'm just going to draw a rectangle behind our text. you can see, whoops, let me lock that layer up, go to this layer, there we go. You can see that everything shows through as it should. Delete that, and I accidentally edited some colors there, not realizing what I had selected. Okay, we actually want this to be black. There we go. Okay, so that's exactly how that's working. The blend here, it is just showing through all the way through to whatever the background may be, and we're going to throw a background behind it in just a minute. So there we go. We have our 3D effect. Let's add a shine to this. We are going to create this shine by locking up layer 4 and unlocking the D-text layer. We're going to select the D-text layer and create a new sublayer. And on this layer, we're going to create our shine. Come over here, whoops, grab the ellipse tool. Let's just set the foreground color to black for now. We will edit that in a minute. Just draw a very long, thin ellipse. Okay, you can see how I've drawn it here. And it looks kind of odd because it's being affected by the mask behind it. Don't worry about that quite yet, though. We will take care of that in a minute. And we need to give this a gradient. We're going to give it a white to black gradient, and we're going to rotate the gradient, let's say -90. So the black is at the bottom, white is at the top. We're going to push the white over to about 50% here. Okay, the location is 50%. Just like that. We're going to select the black, and just like we did before, I'm going to press this flyout menu. I'm going to go to CMYK. Make sure that we're at 100% black, because if you're not at 100% black, the little effect that we're about to do will not work. Over here to transparency, and we can hit screen. And what this is going to leave us with is just white on top of the text. The reason it doesn't look very good is because it still needs to be masked. Now I believe that we still have some text selected, although let's just select the distressed text layer. Command or Control C to copy that. Come up here to layer 5, select layer 5 specifically, and we are going to paste our mask into here. We're going to go Command or Control F to paste it right in place, and we want to set the foreground color to white so you can see the entire thing. Come back to our little shine, and you can see now it is masked to just the text. I want to edit the gradient, however, a little bit. I want to push the shine down to give it more white. And then over here in the transparency palette, I want to change the blend mode to luminosity. Okay, so that is our distressed text. Let's just delete this layer 1 here. And I'm going to lock up both these layers and create a new layer. I'm going to drag it to the bottom, and I'm going to come over here and I'm going to grab this file here, this PSD. I double clicked it, which is opening it in Photoshop, which is not what I want. I want to open this in Illustrator. You know what we're going to do is just click and drag it right into Illustrator. And you can see it appears to be very small. Don't panic though. It's a Photoshop document. It remembers its size, and we can zoom it right up without losing quality. And just position it here. Normally you would just use the Align palette. Let's go to Window, Align, and that's right here. And we're going to say Align to Artboard, and we're going to align it to the center, horizontal and vertical centers. Close that up, and we can see here we have our distressed text. Now, the only thing I don't like is the colors really do not go with the general color theme of the photo. So come in here to D-text layer and select the distressed text. Okay, that's that sub-layer there. Grab the eyedropper tool, and we're just going to grab one of the green tones off of her jeans here. Maybe like that. It's a little dark. Something lighter, maybe like that. That looks pretty good. The only thing I see to be done here is come back to the shine layer. Okay, we're going to rename that layer shine. And maybe lower the opacity to something like 60. And that looks pretty good. Just like that. And that's your distressed text. You can see that it's cutting through, and you can see the background right through the text there and all those effects. So it's really cool, and that's how you create vectorized distressed text here in Adobe Illustrator. I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed it. Please go check out the site. That is www.tutvid.com.